With 17 confirmed victims, acts of cannibalism, and a disturbing fascination with control, Jeffrey Dahmer became one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. Today, we'll explore the life and mind of the Milwaukee Monster, a man whose crimes shocked the entire world. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His early childhood seemed ordinary, but small details would later reveal a darker side. As a child, Dahmer was shy and withdrawn. He showed little interest in other kids and was fascinated by dead animals, a fascination that would only grow stronger with time. Some say the first sign came when he began collecting animal bones, calling them his funnies. His father, Lionel Dahmer, thought it was a phase, but it wasn't. As Dahmer grew older, his behavior became increasingly strange. In high school, he was known as a quiet and awkward teenager, often seen drinking alcohol during class and performing bizarre pranks to get attention. But behind that awkward smile was a mind slowly consumed by dark fantasies. He later admitted that by the age of 16, he had already begun imagining what it would be like to control someone completely, to have them, even after death. In 1978, just weeks after graduating high school, those fantasies turned into reality. Dahmer picked up a young hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. They drank beer at Dahmer's house, talked for hours. But when Stephen tried to leave, Dahmer didn't want him to. What followed would become his first murder, one that would set the tone for everything that came next. After killing Stephen Hicks, Dahmer panicked. He didn't know what to do with the body. For hours he sat in silence, staring at the lifeless man on his basement floor. Eventually he dismembered the body, placing the remains in garbage bags and dissolving parts of it in acid. He scattered what was left in the woods behind his family's home. From that day on, Jeffrey Dahmer learned how to hide death and how to live with it. For nearly 9 years, Dahmer avoided killing again. He went to college, joined the army, and even tried to start a normal life. But his addiction to control and death never truly disappeared. During his time in the military, fellow soldiers later reported his strange behavior. He often drank heavily, kept to himself, and sometimes stared blankly for hours as if lost in thought. By the mid-1980s, Dahmer had returned to Milwaukee. He worked in a chocolate factory by day and wandered the city's bars at night. In 1987, those dark fantasies came back stronger than ever. He met a man named Stephen Twomey at a bar. They went to a hotel together, drank, and fell asleep. When Dahmer woke up, Twomey was dead. Dahmer had no memory of killing him, but he felt something terrifyingly familiar: relief. That night, Dahmer realized he could no longer resist who he was. After Stephen Twomey's death, Dahmer's desires grew stronger. He began visiting gay bars and bathhouses, searching for men he could control. Between 1988 and 1991, his killings became more frequent, more organized, and more disturbing. Dahmer would invite men to his apartment, offering money to pose for photographs. Once there, he gave them a drink, often laced with sleeping pills. When they fell unconscious, Dahmer acted out his fantasies. He would strangle them, take Polaroid pictures of their bodies, and keep parts of them as souvenirs. To him, death was no longer enough. He wanted to create a permanent companion, someone who would never leave him. In his small apartment on North 25th Street, he began experimenting with chemical preservation. He tried using bleach, formaldehyde, and acid to keep the bodies intact. Neighbors often complained about a foul smell coming from his apartment. Dahmer told them it was spoiled meat, and they believed him. Inside apartment 213, police would later find human skulls, bones, photographs, and preserved organs inside the refrigerator. But at the time, no one suspected anything. Dahmer even had encounters with the police, once after a young man escaped his apartment naked and terrified. Dahmer calmly explained that it was just a misunderstanding between two lovers. The officers believed him and let the boy return with Dahmer. that boy never made it out alive. Over time, Dahmer's obsession escalated to cannibalism. He confessed to keeping skulls and hearts as trophies and eating parts of his victims as a way to feel closer to them. For him, it was never about hate or revenge. It was about possession. Dahmer once said, "I wanted to keep them with me, even if it meant eating them." By 1991, the world had no idea that one of the most horrifying killers in history was quietly living amongst them, in apartment 213. Inside apartment 213, Dahmer's dark desires only grew stronger. He spent most nights drinking, listening to music, and staring at the lifeless faces of his victims. The walls of his home became a silent gallery of horror. Skulls lined up in cabinets, bones stored in boxes, and acid barrels in the corner of his bedroom. Neighbors often complained about the smell. Some even called the police, but Dahmer always had an explanation. "My refrigerator broke," or "it's just spoiled meat." His calm and polite attitude convinced everyone that he was harmless, but inside he was completely consumed by his obsession. He wanted control, not chaos. He wanted his victims to stay, forever. He began experimenting with ways to create what he called zombies. People who would obey him, unable to leave. He drilled holes into their skulls and poured acid directly into their brains, hoping to keep them alive but under his control. None of them survived. Dahmer's killings continued. Young men disappeared one by one from Milwaukee streets, bars and bus stops. He lured them with promises of money, photos or drinks, and they were never seen again. By the summer of 1991, he had killed at least 17 people, and yet he still wasn't finished. July 22nd, 1991. A night that would finally end the horror inside apartment 213. That evening, Dahmer met a man named Tracy Edwards at a local bar. He offered him $50 to come over, take some photos, and have a few drinks. Edwards agreed, unaware that he was walking straight into the home of a serial killer. Once inside, Tracy noticed the smell. It was heavy, like spoiled meat. He saw strange blue barrels and a black stain on the carpet. Dahmer locked the door and told him, "You're not going anywhere." Then he pulled out a knife. For nearly 5 hours, Dahmer tried to control him, forcing him to sit down, threatening him, and playing a movie called The Exorcist 3 while mumbling to himself, but Tracy stayed calm. He waited for the right moment. When Dahmer turned his head to look at the television, Tracy hit him and ran for the door. He escaped into the street, still wearing one handcuff, until he found 2 police officers. "He tried to kill me," he shouted. "He's crazy." The officers followed Tracy back to apartment 213, and what they found inside would shock the world forever. When the officers stepped inside apartment 213, the first thing they noticed was the smell, a thick, rotten stench that hit them like a wall. They looked around the small living room. There were Polaroid photos scattered on the floor, a blue barrel in the corner, and a refrigerator that seemed to hum louder than normal. One of the officers, Rolf Mueller, opened a drawer and froze. Inside were dozens of Polaroid photos, showing men in disturbing positions, some clearly lifeless. When he turned to Dahmer and asked what this was, Dahmer simply said, "For my memories." The officers handcuffed him immediately. When they opened the refrigerator, they found a human head inside. In the freezer, more remains. Within hours, the entire building was surrounded by police cars. The news spread like wildfire. A quiet man from Milwaukee had been keeping a collection of human remains inside his apartment. Over the next days, investigators found skulls, bones, and evidence of cannibalism. Neighbors cried, reporters filled the streets, and everyone asked the same question. How could this happen for so long without anyone noticing? During the interrogation, Dahmer confessed everything with a cold calmness. He described each crime in detail, explaining how he wanted to keep his victims forever. He said, "I didn't want them to leave me. I wanted them to stay. By the end of his confession, Jeffrey Dahmer admitted to 17 murders committed between 1978 and 1991. The case became one of the most shocking in American history, and now the entire country wanted to see him face justice. The courtroom was silent when Jeffrey Dahmer walked in. Wearing a beige shirt and glasses, he looked more like an accountant than a killer. But everyone in that room knew the horrors behind his calm face. Reporters filled every seat. Families of the victims stared at him, some trembling with rage, others too broken to speak. Dahmer's voice was quiet, almost emotionless, as he pled guilty to all 17 murders. Yet he insisted that he was not seeking mercy, only understanding. He told the judge, "I never wanted freedom. I wanted death." Psychiatrists described him as both sane and disturbed, a man who knew right from wrong but couldn't stop himself. The prosecution played recordings, showed Polaroids, and displayed the horrifying evidence found inside apartment 213. People in the room cried. Some fainted. When the families were allowed to speak, their pain filled the courtroom. One woman screamed at Dahmer, "You took my baby. You took my only son." Another said, "I hope you burn in hell for what you did." Through it all, Dahmer just stood there, still silent, eyes down. On February 15th, 1992, the judge sentenced Jeffrey Dahmer to 15 consecutive life terms, totaling over 900 years in prison. But even in prison, the story didn't end. Dahmer spent his days quietly, reading the Bible and talking to other inmates about redemption. Some believed he was changing. Others thought it was just another act. Then on November 28th, 1994, Dahmer was attacked by another inmate, Christopher Scarver. He was beaten to death inside the prison bathroom. When the guards found his body, they said he still had a faint smile on his face. Jeffrey Dahmer died at 34 years old, leaving behind a legacy of horror that still fascinates and terrifies the world. His crimes raised endless questions about loneliness, evil, and the darkness that can live behind an ordinary smile. And even today, more than 30 years later, one truth remains. Monsters don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes they live right next door.